Hey everybody, this is Brendon Baillod. I'm back after our short intermission there. Um, I am going to launch right into my presentation here, which then should take us right up to the lunch hour there, where we've got the Zoom room. So for those of you who want to join us in the Zoom room, give me a minute after the presentation to get in there, and I'll launch the meeting, and we'll all get online in Zoom. The link to the Zoom room is inside the event posting for the Zoom room, noon Central Time and 1 o'clock Eastern Time. So without further ado, guys, I'm going to talk about the Fox Islands and the shipwrecks there. These are not your tourist dive wrecks. These are some extremely historic wrecks with some great stories. I'm going to give you a tour of them. So bear with me. I've not done this presentation ever before, and we'll see how it goes. I'm going to be trying to toggle back and forth between a couple of different things. So without further ado, filthy with shipwrecks, Lake Michigan's Fox Islands. All right, let's get that up on the screen. So the Fox Islands are, a small pair of islands out in the middle of Lake Michigan. They are really remote, but they are just perfectly situated to collect ships and shipwrecks. So if you draw a line from the two biggest ports on Lake Michigan, Lake Milwaukee and Chicago, up towards the straits, right, where vessels are all coming for trans-lake commerce, these things are right in the way. So not surprisingly, they've picked up a huge, even ridiculous number of shipwrecks for their location. And I'm going to walk you through, and we'll see how I do at this. So a little bit about the foxes, right? The foxes, you can see where they are here, kind of just below the beavers, just above the manitoos. They're part of this sort of chain of islands in Lake Michigan. And as you can see, when you're coming up past the manitoos here, if you come inside the Manitou Passage, as a lot of ships did, you won't hit them. But if you're coming outside, you do. A lot of the ships, though, that wrecked here were coming out from Escanaba or Green Bay, and they were coming out through the passage here, crossing, and they got blown into the islands. And both of the islands are pretty treacherous. Here you see the early chart. You can see all the reefs around these. This is the first lake survey chart of the area. I think 1860s, right around the Civil War period. They're pretty difficult terrain. A lot of boulders. They look real sandy, and they are above the surface, but they're actually really treacherous underwater. The other thing to note about the foxes, and part of the reason why you don't hear a lot about these wrecks, is that there's no anchorage or no docking out here. You cannot dock a boat here. Basically, if a storm comes up, you just better get on the other side of the island. So they're kind of treacherous. There's a couple of really good books about the foxes if you want to learn about their cultural history and their shipwrecks. And they're written by a friend of our group, Kathy Firestone, who's a member of the Great Lakes Shipwreck Research Group. And Kathy should know a lot about these shipwrecks because Kathy lost her dad on the Bridge Builder X, Sterling Nickerson, and also his friend Glenn Roop. They were on the Bridge Builder X, which is a pretty famous boat. It was used to build the Mackinac Bridge. And they were bound out of Sturgeon Bay for South Fox Island, and they never arrived. And the boat's still missing. Kathy has a site, Finding the Bridge Builder X, on Facebook. I encourage you to check it out if you can. This is one of the main ships that's still missing there, and I think it's probably a big part of her inspiration for writing these excellent books. The islands have a great history. I'm not going to go into them here, into the history of the islands too in depth. Other than to say that they've had a long history of habitation. Today, they are largely wilderness. South Fox Island does have a private residence on it of substantial size with a private airstrip. North Fox Island has a small wilderness airstrip. Almost all the visitation to these islands today is by air. It's a fairly long run from the Michigan shore to come out here. So, how many wrecks do we have out there? Well, there's about 20 wrecks that are associated with the island. I'm not going to go through all of them here in great detail. I'm going to give you a tour of some of them, and I'm going to try to switch between apps here, so you're going to have to bear with me. I hope this works. North Fox Island has a few less, as you might expect, because it's a little bit out of the way. Not every wreck up there is real. I'm going to go through some of that too. And not everyone is where people said it was. I've done a lot of research on this. I'm in the process of writing a book on the wrecks of the beavers and the foxes, as you might imagine. And so I've dove very far in depth on every one of these wrecks and collected a lot of material, way more than I'm going to show here or review here. So that said, let's dive in. The first one I'm going to talk about is the schooner Crescent at North Fox Island. So she was lost there in 1855. She was coming out of Chicago with 400 tons of general merchandise, and she went ashore up on the north side of North Fox Island. One of the ways you can they often don't say where the schooners went ashore, but you can kind of tell by their course they're on. If you kind of watch what they say in the media, you can tell if they were coming from the east or from the west. So you can kind of see where the vessel should be. So I'm going to show you the Crescent now. So if you bear with me, here we go. Oops. There we go. And I'm going to shut off the moniker there. So a lot of these wrecks are visible on Google Earth. So I'm going to come out first of all, and you can see North Fox, right? You can see, if I show you the foxes from space, these are all my markers. There's a lot of shipwrecks out there, obviously. So I'm going to come in now. And what you're going to see is up on the North Shore here, I was scanning over this. I don't know that anyone ever saw this before. Lo and behold, there's a keel and ribs. And it's pretty degraded. If you want to measure the darn thing in feet, you can. She looks like what's left of that is only about 45 feet, but it's very badly degraded. It's kind of in the area where I think the Crescent should be. So I suspect that's the schooner Crescent. I'd like to get up there. This is a tough area to get to, or maybe a paddle, well, not even a paddle boarder. I think you'd have to, I'm not sure how you'd get there to check it out, but she's never been examined. So it's hard to say what she is, but she corresponds well to the Crescent, which is the main known wreck up in that area. All right, let's take a look at the next wreck. The next wreck we have to look at is, well, I'm going to talk about this one, is the schooner Sunnyside. Now, for many years, people misidentified the shipwreck remains down on the south west corner of the island as being the Sunnyside. In point of fact, the Sunnyside didn't sink anywhere around there. The Sunnyside is actually way up northeast of North Fox Island. And I found that out by reading the accounts of it. What happened is, the shipwreck furniture makers in the area back in the early day thought that they had found the remains of the Sunnyside, and they started to salvage it and make furniture out of it. And as luck would have it, they got it wrong. So there's all these artifacts out there that say wood from the schooner Sunnyside. They're actually not from the Sunnyside. The Sunnyside's never been found. By all accounts, she's up here right near this ridge to the northeast of North Fox Island. I'm not sure she'll ever be found. She's in quite deep water. So just an FYI. Now, there's another wreck that's attributed to North Fox Island that is a real mystery, the schooner Minuet, 1886. We've got this extensive article that came out of Traverse City in October of 1886 about the schooner Minuet and this thrilling, disastrous wreck where the schooner came ashore at North Fox and the crew clung to the rigging, and they've got all these colorful names like Scrubby the mate who was lost overboard. And even at the time, if you see the Chicago Inter-Ocean says there's no such vessel as the Minuet given in the Inland Lloyds or any government vessel register. So I thought, well, this maybe could be the wreck of the schooner Marinette, which had a very similar story, but wrecked on the mainland. The problem is the Marinette didn't wreck until a month later. So I think the consensus is that this is there was a cub reporter who liked to write really compelling articles, and he made this one up, I think. I'm pretty sure that the schooner Minuet, despite this very extensive and detailed article about her loss at North Fox, is a fake creation by a reporter in 1886. This vessel absolutely couldn't have existed. They say she was coming out of Manistee. I researched Manistee. There was no vessel by the name of Minuet there. No vessel in any port. So good example of a vessel that probably didn't exist. Now, the two big wrecks that really are, I think, what they attributed to the sunny side back in the day are the big schooner Leonard Hanna and the big propeller Hiram Sibley. These are both big ships that are in the neighborhood of 200 feet long. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a look-see at those from outer space here. So let's hide this, and I will come in and we'll take a look here. All right. Down here, off of this big, long sand and rock reef that comes out of the southwest corner, you've got a couple of big keels and ribs. And I've measured all these. They're not real visible from this particular filming, but this is the best one we have. Pretty sure this is the Hiram Sibley, the big propeller over here. And she's been heavily salvaged. And I think we've got the Leonard Hanna over here. Now, I could be wrong about that, but we also have what I think is some debris over here. And if you look at different filmings of this, you can see some different views, but you obviously can see that the surface water conditions really affect the seeing. But we've got a couple of big shipwrecks, no doubt about it, down here on this corner. And this is the historical location, exactly where the Hiram Sibley and the Leonard Hanna should be. So I believe that's what we've got out here, not the sunny side, as is frequently shown. I'll show you one other thing, though. I was flying over this, and a colleague of mine, Nick Smith, he's kind of the master of Google Earth shipwreck hunting, showed me a couple of these. There's a shipwreck here, no doubt about it, and I don't know what it is. It doesn't correspond to any known wrecks that we have out here. I'd like to get up there and take a look at this one. There are a number of these around the islands. We just don't know what they are, and we don't have news accounts of a wreck being in that area. And this isn't a real long shipwreck. This guy here is maybe 70 feet long, probably, conservatively. So again, wonder what the heck that is, All right, let's move on. Back to the presentation and put this back, and I might as well minimize this. All right. So what's our next special shipwreck? I'll tell you a little bit about the Sibley and the Hanna. I mean, they're not real exciting. These are vessels that basically just got blown ashore there. However, I think the Sibley, if I'm not mistaken, initially got blown ashore in the Manitous, and then later they tried to salvage her, and then the salvage failed, and she ended up on North Fox. So it's a kind of a confusing history. You have to sort of read all the articles to find out that she's not really on the Manitous. She's actually, was lost later up on North Fox. So what do we have next? We've got a little propeller called the Marie that was lost in 1920, and they say on Little Fox Island, meaning the North Fox. This comes from the annual list of U.S. merchant vessels. They have an annual loss list in the annual list of U.S. merchant vessels where you can see some of that. Basically, every vessel lost. I think the Marie is potentially got some remains out there that I'll show you here. I think she might be this debris field here. So if you come in, and this isn't a good filming for it, this one's better. There's a bunch of wooden debris on the bottom here, and some of it's pretty sizable. I think we've got a pretty good piece of hull here along with some distal remains. And this is where she was supposed to be, over on this side of the island. So probably something to check out if anybody can ever get over there, the Propeller Marie. All right. Let's change gears and bring up some other stuff. Again, you'll have to bear with me because I'm having to go back and forth between stuff here. All right. What's next? Let's talk about the big propeller Fletcher, 1880. This was a good-sized vessel, and she is a South Fox wreck. So we're going to switch to South Fox. She went ashore there in the fall of 1880 and was in about 10 feet of water with completely broken up. And she was definitely a total loss. The problem with the Fletcher, and I'll show you what what I think the real issue with finding that wreck is. I'm just gonna hide this and show this in the stream here. The Fletcher at South Fox is somewhere up in this area, and if we look at the filming, we can see there's some really good seeing, and then all of a sudden you get up here into the area where the Fletcher is, up on this northwest corner, and there were a lot of waves on the lake, and you can't see into the water. She's generally up here somewhere. I've tried to find her, but she definitely has remains. She's in shallower water, and she's a huge ship. So no doubt about it, the Fletcher's up here, but we can't see her. So unfortunate. Now, not far from the Fletcher is an unknown that I found. That's definitely a keel. I don't know what it is. It's creating a little bit of a break in the water too, and it's visible on multiple years. So we've got a little keel there. It's not terribly short. It's oh gosh almighty, maybe 80 feet long, and it could just be a piece too, or a side of a vessel. We see that often. So up here, it could be a part of the Fletcher too that broke free. So next time they release a new filming up here, it'd be interesting to see if we've got another wreck up here. And again, if somebody gets out there to the Foxes, be interesting to check out that area. All right, let's go back to the dog and pony show. All right, next up on the wreck list is the schooner James Platt. This has a pretty dramatic story. She was coming up the lakes, and she lost her headgear and got blown across the lake, and ended up getting driven with her anchor down, her hooks down, stern inward towards South Fox Island. She fetched up, and her crew went up into the rigging, and the captain and the cook were lost. The lightkeeper at South Fox rescued these guys from the James Platt, and they had to spend a long night on the island. The James Platt is one that definitely has remains, so let's take a look at those. Pretty dramatic looking remains. All right, let's come out. And the James Platt, as luck would have it, fetched up right here, and we know it's her because if you zoom in, you see a pretty good sized shipwreck there, and we call this fillet of schooner. It's the usual condition in which we find schooners on the lakes, and if we measure her, we're going to see from the tip down back here that she is about 100 and actually 150 and change. That's about the exact length of the James Platt. So you can see her sides are splayed out, one out here, one out this way. And I don't think anybody knew the James Platt was there. I don't think she is on anyone's radar, or she's been surveyed. In fact, I think I might be showing it here for the first time. The only other person I know of that ever spotted this is Nick Smith. And he and I have chatted about it a little bit. So if anyone gets out there, this would be a cool thing to check out. I'm fairly confident that we've got the James Platt there. All right, let's check out some more shipwreck history. The next one we got that we're going to talk about is the schooner Morningstar. Morningstar, I don't have a whole lot on her. They were rescued by the South Fox Island Lightkeeper. She was bound from Charlevoix to Chicago, and she went ashore on the east side of South Fox Island. She's on a sandy bottom. That's about all we have on her. However, I think we may have her remains as well. So let's take a quick look at what we've got there. All right. So let's zoom back out. And if we come over here, I think this may be the Morningstar. And the reason I think that also is because it's near the lighthouse. The lightkeeper, rescued him, and it's on the right side of the island for it. So that's not a good filming for it. But that is a keel right there. No doubt it. You can actually see the ribs and everything. This wreck becomes buried completely. I can tell you that. I think she's probably about this long, so about 100, about $1.25 there. I think we're right at about the right length there for Miss Morningstar. Again, another wreck that I don't think anybody's aware of. And if you look at some of the other filmings, what you're going to see is that she buries completely. So you may go there and not find her. But that is, I believe, the mortal remains of the schooner Morningstar. All right, let's take a look at what's next. Shifting about here. Gonna hide that, gonna show that. And the next shipwreck we have on the block is the schooner John C. Bauer, 107 footer on the west side of the island near the light. 1900. She was built, I think, as the Planet, maybe even as a steamer. Let's see. I'm trying to remember these all. But anyway, she fetched up, and her crew was rescued by an Indian fishing boat. Yeah, she was the Scow Planet. I'm sorry. West side of Fox Island, and she was a total loss. So I'll show you what I think might be the Planet. Again, this is another one that's going to require a person to go out there and kind of look at what we got wreck wise. I think that this is just my personal opinion, of course, but I think that this is her right here. And I will dial back to a better image. There we go. So you can kind of see a wreck here, I think. And I think that may be her. She fetched up right about where you'd expect, and you can kind of see a long straight line here, dark thing on the bottom. It's a little, not quite as clear perhaps as some of the wrecks, but she would be right here off the south end. And so if a diver gets out there, this would be a cool one to check out, the John C. Bauer. I think that's her. If we throw a tape on her, well, how long is she? Well, that's not her. 344 feet, probably not. I think that her remains are probably one of these smaller segments in here. There's definitely looks like a wooden object on the bottom there. All right, let's zoom out and take a look at some other wrecks. I should mention too, one of my favorite parts about the John C. Bauer article is how the press of the day treated these old vessels. Old enough to go. They basically said she was just an old ship that was worn out. All right, let's look at the next one. The Schooner Mars. Now, this is a famous one. Most people know about the Schooner Mars, who know about South Fox. Couple of things I would say about her. 1903, she's a 122 footer that went ashore on the west side. And one of the unique things we have about the Schooner Mars is we have an alleged photo of her. I have some doubts about the authenticity of this photo attributed to the Schooner Mars. I don't doubt that it's her. She went ashore many times around the lakes, and I think it's quite possible this could be a photo of a different stranding of the Schooner Mars. But the news article says that she had been stripped completely right away of her running gear, like the same day by the crew. And unless the crew had a camera on them and were able to take a picture, this vessel is carrying all her canvas and running gear still. And so it doesn't look to me like this is the same incident. And of course, we can't see a name on it. So I'm not sure that that's an actual photo. But the crew of the Schooner Mars had a narrow escape when she came ashore there at South Fox Island. And I will give you a little bit of a look at what I think is the Schooner Mars. So I found this wreck myself, just sort of looking about. I don't know if it's the Mars, but it does line up exactly. Is a definite big hull-shaped object on the bottom. And it is, oh gosh, golly, gee whiz, it's even got a little bowsprit on it. My goodness. It looks to be about, let's say 112 and, or so and change. This is another one that would be good to check out. I do suspect that it may well be the Mars. And again, you can really see the bottom with great clarity in this May 2012 satellite imaging. Really good seeing. Just a fun thing to do to go around out there. And again, like I say, I've researched all these wrecks in much greater detail than I'm showing here, and I'm not really telling their stories in great detail. Just kind of want to show the what I think are their remains so people can check them out. All right, let's move on. The next wreck out there that I want to look at is a really interesting one. It's a giant 301-foot steel propeller called the Vega. It's stranded on the northeast side of the island, and she had a crew of 19. She was blown ashore. She was heading from Escanaba to South Chicago, and she must have blown, I mean, like to end up where she did on the northeast side of the island. I'm not quite sure how that could have happened, but she ended up there. They tried to get her off. A group of fishermen went out in a boat and rescued the crew, but there she lay on the bottom. And the Vega, to me, is really probably the best dive site out there, I would say, if I was to guess. I know a few people have dived her. Wayne Lusardi's been on her. The state of Michigan has looked at a lot of these wrecks, but certainly not all of them. If we look up here, what we're going to see is a great, big, huge shipwreck right off the northeast coast of South Fox. She's almost impossible to miss from space. She's broken in half right here amidships, but you can definitely see a big wreck. Now they've salvaged her engine. I think there may be some boiler debris here. Not entirely sure, but this is definitely a big old wreck. She's 281 feet long, and that's with the big break in the middle. So the Vega, seldom visited. I don't know of anybody that's ever gotten any video footage of her, but a heck of a wreck. All right, let's switch gears. The next item that we have on the docket is the big propeller Falcon. Went ashore in 1909 on the west side of the island. The crew had a harrowing and thrilling experience. All the reporters seemed to have a way with words for describing shipwrecks back then. They sent a wrecking tug out to her. They tried to get her off for a couple of months, and they really weren't able to. She broke up pretty quickly. They did send a crew out to salvage her engine. She had left from Escanaba, bound for the Michigan shore with iron ore. So the Falcon is probably one of the most interesting wrecks on the island. I also don't think anyone's ever dived the Falcon. So let's take a look at her and see what's there to dive. I found this one from outer space myself. I'm not sure that if other people knew about this one before. She's in three big pieces. So you can see where the Falcon is. She's just kind of about a third of the way down the island on the west side. And I was flying over, just having a fun time looking at the bottom in shipwrecks when I noticed this giant shipwreck on the bottom, which is pretty obvious that we've got a big hull bed here. So I ran the tape on it, and lo and behold, we're looking at a 176-foot wreck. Falcon's 175. Pretty sure this is the Falcon as opposed to the Fletcher, which is nearby and is a little bit bigger. One of the other things that I spotted right away was this large and interesting looking rock. And if you go in on the large and interesting looking rock, it's pretty clear that that's a boiler. And that's a big boiler, 15 feet by about 10 feet. So good sized steam plant. We come up here, and this is clearly the side of the Falcon, probably the starboard side, and completely got disarticulated and moved in a good 200 feet from the main wreck, which is really interesting. But then if you come in here, and I originally thought this might be the Mars, but it's clearly the port side of the Falcon. And you can see that there's no keel here. What we're seeing are the knees and the bracing here. So we definitely have the other side of her. And look at how far that moved. I mean, that is, oh gosh, how far in? The side is 1,500 feet. So, 5 football fields away from the rest of the wreck. It really got disarticulated. And I don't doubt that there's debris up here in the tree line and stuff from the wreck too. So the Falcon, really, this is a study too in how wrecks become disarticulated over time. And if you want to look at the bottom here, you can actually see a bunch of debris from this wreck. There's a whole nother piece right here. There are pieces of wood strewn along the bottom all the way in, forming sort of here's another one right here, forming sort of a whole chain of custody, if you will, all the way to the shore. So the mortal remains of the Falcon as they lie at South Fox Island. All right, let's move on. Next up for bids, we've got the couple of little ones. We have the gas launch AC Pierce and the gas launch Emma S. Olson. So the Pierce just stranded on shore. And again, these come, particularly the Pierce, comes from the annual list of U.S. merchant vessels. She stranded on South Fox Island, no lives lost. We don't know much else about her. One of the things I can tell you, though, is that the main center of, activity on South Fox Island was the lighthouse down at the southern tip. And so most of these little accidents would have happened probably around the southern end where the lighthouse was. There wasn't much cause to go elsewhere, and it was shallow and hazardous other parts around the island. So I think the Pierce was probably lost around there. She was originally built as a schooner, but then later became a gas launch. And then also the gas launch Emma S. Olson is noted to have wrecked there. I actually have an account from my run of the annual reports of the U.S. Life Saving Service that says that she was towed from South Fox Island to Northport Island and then hauled out of the water and had her engine removed. So the MS Olson, even though she is noted as having been lost at South Fox Island, she was definitely towed ashore or towed to the mainland to Northport. So she will not have remains there, just for the record. So let's take a look at what we have there on the, if anything, on the satellite that may give us clues. All right. We have up here, I'm thinking we may have some remains of the AC Pierce. Why do I say that? We have an object in the water right here. And it looks like it's just a narrow thing, but it's really not. If you look at another generation, you see that it's actually kind of a good-sized object. Let me see if there's any better view of it. No, that's all silt covered. So you can see how the suspended particulate in the water really can hide things. A little better seeing there, a lot better seeing there. And then, of course, the earlier views are pretty cloudy. But I do think we've got an object in the water here, and I'd like to see what it is. Is it the AC Pierce? It's about 20 feet. It could be. For my money, I don't know that it is. I think the Pierce, if she was going to be found, is probably down here closer to the lighthouse, and this is this little bay here. Now, one of the problems with the Foxes is that they're really underlain by a lot of boulders and rock. It's really bold bottom, and hard. And anything that was here would have been completely disarticulated and sort of taken apart. So you're just not going to see a lot of shallow remains of small vessels. I'm thinking they're going to be completely ripped up. If we look over here, you'll see that bigger ships probably fared better, but smaller vessels probably not so much. So I think you can see down into the water here, 20, 30 feet. Probably some other vessels out here yet to be found that you could see from space. I'd be interested if anybody finds the Fletcher up here from outer space, if anybody can see her. I've looked for her several times. I'd be interested in other things that you might spot out here on the reefs. There should be a number of other wrecks that would be of interest. So in closing, or in winding up, the Fox Islands are just a treasure trove. They really are, of historic wreck remains. They probably should really be examined by in person, if people can get out there to them and see what those sites are, ground truth them and vet them. again, because they are so remote, people just haven't gotten out there and, been able to look at them. And it is a long ways from civilization. So I'm going to entertain questions from anybody. And again, I may be getting out there before too long. And if I do, I'd be happy to, team up with folks if they want to go and have a look and see what's out there. Should be a lot of fun. Anybody have any questions they want to throw at me? Somebody's asking how deep is the hull. I'm not sure on which one we're talking about. Most of these are pretty shallow. I would say, the deepest of these wrecks is probably 20 feet deep. The shallowest are probably, 5 feet, if that. So again, other questions that people might have? All right. Well, I'll take care of some housekeeping then. Folks, again, thanks for joining. And we're going to have our Zoom room starting in about 20 minutes. And this will give everybody a chance, to go and grab it. I intended for this to be a short presentation so people could have a chance to get lunch and prepare maybe before we jump into the Zoom room. So again, thanks everybody. And thanks to the people that have given me a lot of information on the Foxes, Nick Smith, Bernie Hellstrom, and also to Kathy Firestone for writing those amazing books. And they really are a great resource and go into incredible detail. And again, too, she is looking for the Bridge Builder X. She's reached out to a number of different wreck hunters, and it's a tough find. The grid's going to be big. But it's one of those, all these wrecks I think will be found someday, including the Bridge Builder X. So by all means, if you want to take a stab at it, do so. All right. I will see you all in the Zoom room. If you want to get to the Zoom room, there's a link there. You're going to need to go into the event for the lunchtime Zoom room, and you will see a Zoom link in there that you need to follow. And that should take you in. I don't think you'll need a meeting code. I think I've got it all set up. If it does turn out to need a meeting code, I'll post it out there. So thank you again, everybody. And somebody's asking what the number and password is for Zoom. I set it up so it shouldn't require a number or a password. You should just be able to click the link. If it does require that, and it turns out to require it, I will post that on the Facebook event so people can get in. But at this point, I don't think it's going to require that. I think I set it up so it won't. Other questions before I sign off? All right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me. And thanks again, everybody, for joining us for this wonderful event, the Inland Seas Online Shipwreck Festival. So long, everybody, and see you in 20 minutes.